let's load some boxes. It's Will and it's Jordan. We are back. Well, again, kind of a all over the place schedule. Not really all over the place. We told you we'd be back. One more show in March, and then we're going to do weekly shows leading up to the draft. Should be one contact our people are talking to his people with Dustin Bako. Absolute fun to the show and love having him on. A lot of really good draft stuff coming up, but you guys have to wait a week because we're not talking about the draft this week. I know. Full draft. We still have free agency moves to talk about. So quick layout of the show, and Will, let me know if I forget anything. We're doing a dance on Aaron Rodgers' grave because it looks like he's not a Viking. Correction, he's not a Viking, and it's going to probably not be a thing, I hope, that he's not going to be a Viking. We're going to talk about the backup position. I know some of these names that the Vikings were kind of being tied to are kind of being poached away, but like, will the Vikings really in on Jameis Winston? I don't think so. So we'll talk about that. Joe Mason is now a Viking. We haven't talked about that. And yeah, I mean, Jeff Okudah. Let's start with Jeff Okudah, because this should be very quick, I think. And also, I want to get... This is a victorious day for me. I predicted the Jeff Okudah signing. Like, just straight up. I didn't break it. I didn't have inside sources telling me that they were going to sign Jeff Okudah. Let me be very transparent. But I did say Kwesi loves bad first-round picks, and Jeff Okudah fits that bill. And now he's a Viking. And I feel pretty good about that. So, Will, what role do you see him having on this team other than potential, like, doesn't make it out of training camp body?
I think because this secondary needs bodies, they're filling out that room, if you will, that space. So it's not completely as if any body is going to get playing time. But I think we just need to be very clear that Jeff Okudah has a steep hill to climb. He was a top, what was he, Jordan? First round pick in 20. He was the third overall pick in the 2020 draft. The Lions took him, and I think Vikings fans probably remember him most for how much he holds Justin Jefferson when he would defend him. And, in some ways, it's not too far from the truth. He has not really stuck in the NFL. He played with the Lions for 3 seasons, but he only started 22 games in those 3 seasons. 15 of them coming in his final season with Detroit. So he clearly did not cut it for a team that was on the rise, and since then he sort of bounced around. He was in Atlanta in 2023, he was in Houston in 2024. Very limited snaps, very limited time on the field. And so I think we just need to be honest about the fact that Jeff Okudah has so far been sort of a failed NFL experiment. Now, I think if I remember right, just Jordan, based on, watching Okudah play against the Vikings, he's got some man-to-man potential, something that I think the Vikings want to be getting into. But I think it's a very low-risk opportunity for the Vikings. You bring in a guy who has a skill set and who has potential, was drafted as such. Now you see what he can do. And I think there's probably, to answer your initial question, there is a non-zero chance that he doesn't make it out of camp. I think we just need to be very clear with that. But I also think that guys on this roster with this team have surprised that we might not necessarily have thought, would have a role. So I'm not ruling it out, but I also think the Vikings probably did it as a depth piece, special teams depth as well. And I also would not, not shelve the opportunity that they might draft a cornerback as well. I mean, this team is, you can never have too many cornerbacks, just like Mike Zimmer would say. And yes, you're getting guys back like Mekhi Blackman from injury, and you're hoping that Dwight McGlothern can splash. But, in some ways, Okudah's a little bit of insurance for that. More bodies, more competition. Hopefully they can, make each other better by having more people in there who are sort of fighting for their NFL life. So I think it's a very low risk proposition. I mean, I don't even know what the deal was. Jordan, was it $1 million? Like
it was very low.
Yeah. So it's about as low as you can go, and I don't have too many qualms with it. I mean, it's low risk, decent reward.
I
if
think
all goes well.
I have another bold Jeff Okudah related prediction. I think he does get cut coming out of training camp on that final cut day. Part of the reason he did not see a ton of snaps with the Lions was because he tore his Achilles, and he never really got that athleticism back. It was pretty gruesome on him, and he was a guy that when you go back, and I'm not trying to sell you that Jeff Okudah is going to become this. So don't think I'm saying that. I think Jeff Okudah stinks, and I don't think he's ever going to be good again because he tore his Achilles. It's a tragic story, but he was a guy coming out that draft experts were pretty positive he was going I'm trying to think of the last guy that came out where it was yeah, he's going to be a shutdown corner in the NFL. There's no questions. He can play zone. He can play man. He's very fast. He is physical. He's got every tool in his toolbox. He is going to be a perennial Pro Bowler. He might, and if you're lucky, he will be an All-Pro Hall of Fame talent. But he's at least going to be a starting caliber #1 defensive back in the NFL. And as my dog goes a little crazy behind me, I don't think he's ever going to reach that, like I said. But you brought up an interesting name in Dwight McLaughlin, who we have to call Nudie. I have to call him Nudie because I was watching the Chris Sims on Button podcast the other day, or listening to, I guess I should say. And, I'm a bad employee, so sometimes when they put a graphic up, I unlock my phone and I will look to see what the graphic is, because I listen to it through YouTube. And they were talking about Travis Hunter and the passing grades that he's allowed when thrown at. And it is some of the best in FBS history. Or maybe it was the last 10 years. Something like that. Really good. Elite level stuff from Travis Hunter. Nudie McLaughlin was second on that list by a percentage point. Travis Hunter had a rating point, whatever. Travis Hunter QBs had a 62 QBR when they threw at him. And Nudie McLaughlin was a 63 and a half. It's kind of crazy. So maybe we should give, and I didn't recognize his name. I saw Dwight McLaughlin and I was like, that name is so familiar. Why do I know that? And then I was like, oh my God, it's Nudie. So that was kind of fun. So I think the Vikings are going to have, obviously, they're going to have Blackman coming back. They're going to have McLaughlin, who I think is potentially going to maybe see some time. They have Rodgers that they signed from Philly, and then of course they have Byron Murphy. And those are the four guys. So maybe Okudah is battling it out with a rookie, but if it's close, it's going to go to the guy who is making $250,000 a year, and you have team control for the next 4 seasons, as opposed to the guy who's making a couple $1 million maybe. Who, if he hits for you, he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. It's just kind of how the game goes. So, not huge thoughts. I'm going to put it on the boat now at the end of March that he gets cut at the end of August. So 5 months to wait for that one, but we'll see if it pays off. Any more Jeff Okudah, or do we want to move Joe Mason?
No, I'm good moving on from Mr. Okudah.
Yeah. So Joe Mason, this is a move that is actually exciting. Ran for 100 yards against the Vikings last season. Honestly, for the first month and a half, 2 months of the season, it was whoa, who is this guy? It was pretty surprising that he was doing what he was doing. This is my theory, and I want your opinion on this. I guess I shouldn't say theory. My fear. Jordan Mason, is he a guy that was made by San Francisco's they have this weird talent for making running backs look really elite, even if they're not? So do you think we will get production, not statistically, but just when he's on the field, because he's going to be splitting snaps with Aaron Jones? Do you think we will see production at the same level, or do you think coming to Minnesota there will be a drop-off, since for some reason Kyle Shanahan just knows how to run the damn ball better than any coach in the NFL?
I think that's where we need to start. No matter how much better the Vikings' run game gets, either with scheme or with what they got up front, in the two Indianapolis interior offensive linemen. Kevin O'Connell's offense won't run the ball as well as Kyle Shanahan's. It's just you can't expect it to. Yes, it might happen once in a blue moon. There might be a season where the Vikings, run the ball better than the 49ers, but over the course of time, it's not going to be the case. Kyle Shanahan has made careers for guys like Raheem Mostert, and Jordan Mason now gets a $12 million contract. Over the course of 2 years, I should note, it's not a 1 year, $12 million, but it's a good contract for a guy who's really just had one good season in the NFL. But there are a couple things that I think are worth noting when it comes to Jordan Mason and why I think maybe he will dip down a little bit in comparison to what he did in San Francisco, but he will elevate what the Vikings have done. First and foremost, the guy averaged over 5 yards a carry last season. That's really good. That's the Vikings as a team averaged about 4. And so, even just do the rough math, 1 extra yard per carry, that's very helpful. Even if you split it in half and he gets 4.5 per carry, that's going to be a very helpful piece in the backfield. The other thing that is very, very exciting about Jordan Mason, what have the Vikings lacked when it comes to the run game? Obviously, the interior of the offensive line, obviously just sort of consistency in the run game, but I would say primarily running in the red zone and having somebody who can be a bruiser. That's Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason is a guy who will lower his shoulder and lay a hit on you. More so than, yes, Aaron Jones takes a hit, gives a hit, but Aaron Jones is more of a finesse back if you had to put him in a category, similar to Dalvin Cook. They had the ability to be physical, but it wasn't their strong suit. That's, I think, what we theoretically thought we were getting with Alexander Mattison, but it wasn't. And I think Jordan Mason, truthfully, is that. It was funny. One of my friends who's a big 49ers fan, he lives in the Bay Area, he texted me as soon as this trade happened, and all he said was, Mason is a dog. Because Jordan Mason is going to lower the boom on defenders, and I think that is going to be a big help for this Vikings run game inside the 20. So just having the ability to sort of fall forward for yards, it's just something that the Vikings have just really struggled in. And running inside the red zone has been almost impossible for this team. And when you come up against good defenses, you can't only pass in the red zone. So I'm really excited for the Jordan Mason signing. It seems small to get a backup running back. The Vikings clearly felt it was important enough to make a trade for it. Not a huge trade. All they gave up was a 2026 sixth-round pick and then a pick swap for this year. But I think it was a very important signing.
Yeah, I think going out and getting him, and like you just laid out the trade, I mean, like Ed Ingram and a pick swap, and now here you are, and you have a running back that, I pulled up his stats here, and he had 348 yards after contact last season, and he broke 13 tackles, and he only played in 12 games, so it wasn't like, he only played, three quarters of the season, so he hasn't ran a lot. It's not like we traded for I don't want to poop on Aaron Jones here. I like Aaron Jones, and he's going to be a big part of his offense. And I thought he did well for us last season, but there was a concern when we were doing the off-season shows last year where it was like, Aaron Jones, can he stay healthy? Is he good? What do we think? And there was kind of this conversation to be had about Aaron Jones. And it was like, even if he's the best running back in the league, what do we have, like a year or two of the guy? Because he's, up there. Jordan Mason, he's 27, he just really hasn't been used that much. And that's the big thing. That's always a conversation with running backs is, they're almost like a vehicle. It's like, how many miles do they have on them? Because that engine doesn't run forever. And I think Mason is definitely, like you said, the trade, what we gave up, crazy good. The contract was good. I just like everything about it. And I think that it brings, like you said, inside the 20s, it's going to be different next season. And I'm going to be really disappointed if it's not. If the Vikings, after basically spending most of their offseason on let's run the ball from inside the 5 and score touchdowns, if they continue to go out there and fail to do so and find themselves, 3rd and 3 after running it twice from the 1 and losing a yard on each play, there's going to be some, okay, we need to have a conversation about who's, stacking the players. And also, Kevin O'Connell would then be under scrutiny because it's like, okay, why can't you figure out how to make your guys run the ball good in these situations? So, it's exciting, though. I mean, I'm very excited about Joe Mason. Do you think, did that signing, this is a very specific question, did that, I keep saying signing and I mean trade, did this trade impact where you're at? I know we'll pre-draft, so I'm not going to sit here and be like, how many wins did you think they were going to win, on March 24th, but did it impact your overall thoughts on this team? Like, if you were thinking, okay, this is with McCarthy at the helm, this is probably like a 10-win team, did it make you think like, oh, that changes things significantly? Or was it more like that's a good role-playing piece?
Probably the latter. Also, it's really hard to... I mean, of course, we all have expectations for McCarthy. We all have ideas of what we think he could be. Even if he's 80% of what Sam Darnold was last year, the Vikings are going to be a pretty good team. Now, what I would say is, even so, these 2 seasons that the Vikings have had tons of regular season success, 2022 and 24. They didn't run the ball great in either of them, and they still managed to win, 13 and 14 games in those seasons. Now, do I think that the running game and who they have running the ball can help them? Yes, but also let's just be realistic. You're not going to probably get more regular season wins than what they were able to get in those 2 seasons. So let's just say the Vikings win 10-11. I would say probably high side 12 wins this season. Yes, I think they have a really good roster, but I also just think when you have a rookie quarterback in there, you're going to get some variance. Yes, McCarthy's not technically a rookie, but for all intents and purposes, he's going to be.
Right.
And what I do think, though, that this will really help the Vikings in is the postseason. Who wins in the postseason? It's the teams that can stop the run and the teams that can run the ball. And I think the Vikings have shown an ability to stop the run, but they have not shown an ability to run the ball, because in the postseason, you are going to be scouted more scrupulously than any other regular season game. Teams are going to be keying on all of your tendencies. But the teams that can punch you in the mouth and still get 4, 5, 6 yards on a running attempt, those are the teams that are going to keep going in the postseason. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention, to your point about, this team getting what we think is probably the necessary pieces to at least improve. We don't think they're going to become the Baltimore Ravens this season. I don't think anybody is imagining that. But in terms of running the ball and running it better, they are very clearly investing in this. They got, speaking of the Ravens, the Vikings just signed a couple weeks ago an assistant offensive line coach who was with the Titans when Derrick Henry was there. So, yes, you had Derrick Henry, but you also had to have a decent enough offensive line to block for him. He's worked with many teams in the past. He was with the Jets for the last 2 seasons. Now, I don't know what to make of the Jets for the last 2 seasons because everything was just a mess there, but they're clearly investing in different resources to make the offensive line and then, as you would imagine, the run game better. And yeah, to your point, if this does not go well and they still run for 4.1 yards a carry or something this season, and they're still sort of middle of the pack to bottom of the pack in effective running percentage, Kevin O'Connell's going to have to answer some questions. And maybe they have to look longer and harder about who is scheming their run game. Are they putting enough resources into it? I mean, these are questions they should be asking now. That's going to become even more of a question if the Vikings reach the end of next season. It's this kind of the same thing. They're a really good offense. They can pass the ball really well, but when it comes down to it, they don't trust their running backs to get them 2 yards on 3rd and 2. So those are the questions that are going to be very important. And if O'Connell can't get an offense to succeed in those areas, yeah, he's going to deserve lots of scrutiny. He still deserves some at this point, but it's going to get even hotter if, okay, now we've actually got the pieces. Because in the past, you could make the argument, well, he's working with Ed Ingram and Garrett Bradbury and the washed up remains of Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. And what do you expect? Now you've beefed up the interior of the offensive line. You still have Josh Oliver. You got a bruiser of a running back. You still have CJ Ham. You still have Aaron Jones, who's coming off the best season of his career. If you can't make something with that, I mean, let's even just say top half of the league in running the ball. We're not even asking for much, just top half of the league in terms of effectiveness. Then there's going to be some big questions.
And I don't think that either one of us is making the case that if we don't run the ball better this season, it's Kevin O'Connell's gotta go.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I'm listening to Baby Mono. And so I think I can hear myself through it. I gotta tone it down. It's tripping me up. But neither one of us is making that case. And I think what we're trying to get at here is, one, why did they not run the ball well? We know right now, like you said, O'Connell kind of gets a pass because the offensive line has not been good. The running backs have not been good outside of Aaron Jones last season. And I do think, even though he was never really on a pitch count, I do think there was a concerted effort to not run him until the wheels fall off, especially as they kept winning games. And it was like, oh, he needs to be healthy in January. Like late January, hopefully, maybe February. And so they started to, they brought Cam Akers in. They were running with Cam Akers a lot. Look, I love Cam Akers. I don't, but like, I think he's a fine guy. He is not that quality of running back. I mean, I think him and Alexander Madison are pretty comparable, and it's like, yeah, they're a solid RB2. You probably don't want to trust your run game on their shoulders for, 17 games, but they're solid to come in for like a drive or two. But it wasn't like the guy had prime Derrick Henry or Adrian Peterson, or one of these all-time backs that it just felt like he was wasting. But the question's going to be, okay, what happens if Ryan Kelly and Will Fries, they get hit, we're all excited about it. What happens if, like, 2 weeks into the season, PFF is, handing out grades, and they're like, by the way, these guys suck at football now. Like, they're just not playing well. And we don't know if it's, imbeciles like myself will not be able to truly break it down. Like, I know football, but I don't know football to the point where I can explain why someone got a 67 versus an 88 PFF grade. I'm more of an eye test kind of guy. But, if that happens, then I think the conversation switches to Kwesi. Point being, if they don't run the ball better, someone's going to be in trouble. And it's either going to be a Stone talking to Kevin O'Connell, or it's going to be, Kwesi doesn't have a contract right now, guys. Like, Kwesi's going into free agency next year, or whatever you want to call being jobless, unemployed. He's staring down the bloodlines. He needs this to work. Like, he needs this, them to be able to run the ball. And I think him and O'Connell have a good enough relationship that I don't think O'Connell's going to force them to run the ball. But I made the point a couple times last season. O'Connell sees headlines, and O'Connell knows narratives that are going on. You see the Green Bay game where he first fed Aaron Jones late in that game. See the Jets game where it felt like Sam Darnold was throwing the ball a little bit too much than what he probably should have. Like, he knows these narratives exist, and he tries to give his guys opportunities to win the day, which is cool. He's a player's coach. But is he going to make a more concerted effort to run the ball to save Kwesi's job? Like, that's what I'm getting to. It's an interesting storyline. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. It's something that's on my mind. Is like, I think if they really do have a great relationship, and Kevin feels his opinion is valued when they talk about draft picks and free agent signings, I'm sure Kevin would rather have Kwesi than like some old 65-year-old GM who's going to say, like, no, my quarterback has to chew red man tobacco, right? None of this grizzly stuff. I'm sure that he would like to keep that. So, you brought up an interesting point that I think is a good segue point. I will give you a chance to talk a little bit more of this vague the politicking of football, if you will. But you brought up the Jets being in turmoil the last 2 years, which I think is a great way. Let's ask the question, why were the Jets such a clown show the last couple of years? I think we both know the answer, and it seems like the Vikings won't be pursuing that. If you have anything about the politics of Kwesi and O'Connell and the run game and everything, we can continue on that. But I am going to go ahead and load up the Aaron Rodgers point on in the ball machine, so you can knock that one out of the park.
The only very brief thing I'll say about the Kwesi and Kevin politics is, one, they seem to really like each other and work well together, and two, having continuity between the coach and the coach and the GM, yes, coach and quarterback, but coach and GM over time is very important. And if you can keep the two together, not at all costs, if Kwesi's not doing a good job, you got to find somebody else. But there's a reason why Spielman and Zimmer were gone at the same time. You want that marriage to start together. And hopefully O'Connell and Adolfo-Mensa can keep that going into perpetuity here. Obviously barring performance and all that. Yes, Jordan, I think the Jets have kind of always been in turmoil. I think it probably boils down to Woody Johnson and the ownership group and all that. I think that's a whole nother problem. But a big reason why was number 8, the guy who played quarterback, or sometimes played quarterback, when he felt like playing quarterback. That is not to diminish his Achilles injury. That's horrible. Like, any Achilles injury that's going to shelve you for a season. Nobody's doubting the toughness of Aaron Rodgers for missing a season with the Achilles injury. I'm more talking about the skipped practices and the Egypt trip and the, training camp stuff and not showing up to mini camp and whatever he didn't want to show up to because he was Aaron Rodgers. I think we're both glad today that Tom Pelissero reported last week that the Vikings are, for now, officially out on Aaron Rodgers. They are not completely closing the door to it. I think it's a situation that they will monitor. But everything we keep seeing, Jordan, is what? They're going to give number 9, J.J. McCarthy, every opportunity to win the job.
Sorry, continue. I was just going to interject real quick and say, and I think this will tee up J.J. McCarthy, as you move into kind of that part of it. The Vikings, I'm concerned. I'll just tease my take because it is kind of a lengthy one. The Vikings I think they've confounded me in what they have done in the last 2 weeks at the quarterback position. And I will elaborate more on that shortly. I do want to point out, by the way, you bringing up the Aaron Rodgers thing. The Aaron Rodgers Achilles thing specifically. Let's all go back to that season. 2 quarterbacks tore their Achilles. Cousins tore his Achilles that season. And you didn't hear a damn peep out of the guy. The whole time. He just rehabbed in silence. And then I think he blew the Gallagher or whatever for a Monday night game or a Thursday night game or something. He did that cool thing, which was fun. Took his shirt off, showed off his Batman abs. No peeps. Aaron Rodgers was doing a damn press release tour, he just wrote a book talking about, I might play this season for the Jets. I might come back off an Achilles injury in 2 months. Who knows? Anything is possible through alternative medicine. It was the wildest thing I've ever seen. Because it's the first time in my life that a quarterback has gotten injured and hasn't just been written off the show for a season. You know what I mean? He kept himself in the narrative, and he's doing the same damn thing now. I don't want to sound like Mike Florio and just berating on Aaron Rodgers, but God, this is annoying. Just sign with Pittsburgh. It's the best option you have. If you want to win, you go to Pittsburgh. Because I think Minnesota made it pretty clear. I think all of this was speculation, but I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interject. I would like for you to continue.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. What's the other thing about Aaron Rodgers that just drives people insane? Is that he's been talking about retirement for 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. What does that tell you? It tells you that it's a guy that isn't fully bought into continuing to play this sport, which is fine. I mean, the guy's 41 years old. He can retire. There is no reason that he needs to keep playing football. And truthfully, I think many of us hope he would just stop. But
No, I want him to go to Pittsburgh. That would be that. I'd love to see Pittsburgh turn into the Jets for a year before he retires, and just absolutely. I mean, that's some professional wrestling level stuff. Like,
well, and what's the thing that the Vikings have hammered on for the last 12 months? It's we are signing guys who are smart, who are tough, and who love football. I'm not convinced Aaron Rodgers loves football anymore. And again, to my point, that is okay. He is really old for football. Most guys are not Tom Brady and don't play well into their 40s. It is just fine. There is no moral failing for Aaron Rodgers to just walk away. But to your point, I mean, he wants the attention, and so he's going to keep doing this, and he's going to keep sort of, stringing us along so that there's media coverage over him constantly. And I can't even remember, Jordan, how much we talked about Aaron Rodgers 2 weeks ago, but I will just finish with this, and then I will rest my Aaron Rodgers takes until if the Vikings ever sign him, and if they do, I will stand by these takes. Aaron Rodgers, if he joined the Minnesota Vikings, would be like oil and water. It wouldn't mix. It would not work. And, what have the Vikings tried to build up this whole time? It's a culture of collaboration and cohesion. Do those words sound like Aaron Rodgers to you? No. He's the coach he's the guy who pushes his head coach away when he wants a hug. Robert Saleh went for a hug after Aaron Rodgers scored a touchdown and he pushed him away. Aaron Rodgers is not cohesion in any sense of the word. And now you can say, well, Rodgers probably can still play. He's still got a sharp mind. He can still, move defenses. He can still call audibles, all that. I'm sure that's true. But if you just look at simply what he's produced on the field, even if you remove the intangibles, if you pretend this is Madden for a minute, and you pretend that all that matters is, the physical makeup of what happens between the lines. For one, Aaron Rodgers does all these weird hand signals that I'm not sure everybody's going to catch up on right away except for Justin Jefferson. And so that's going to be a problem. The other thing is he has had a 91 and a 90 passer rating the last 2 seasons. He's not even been that productive in terms of, the sort of conglomerate passer scores. He's had decent weapons. He had Devontae Adams for a little bit. He had Mike Williams, who truthfully has been really good, except when he played with Aaron Rodgers. He had Garrett Wilson, who is, for all intents and purposes, awesome.
But not Justin Jefferson. That is as Justin Jefferson would tell you. He is not Garrett Wilson.
Did not have Justin Jefferson. That is correct. But I think the reality is, and Jordan, you mentioned the injury, which is highly unfortunate, but he even had one of those bad passer rating seasons before the injury. He hasn't had a good full season since 2021 when he won the MVP.
Yep.
He's been fine, but he hasn't been worth the headache that he would be coming to your team. And does he give you the best chance to win a Super Bowl? I say no. No, because I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to win anybody a Super Bowl before he retires. And although J.J. McCarthy probably isn't going to win one this season, giving him the reps, giving him the live action is going to help him and prepare him to win you a Super Bowl in the future. I just don't think there is a clear path as to why you would ever sign him, and there's no way he's going to take a cheap contract. And so
I think that's smarter people than me will tell you Aaron Rodgers the last few years, like since his last year in Green Bay, up to the Jets, he's becoming a check down merchant. Like he's almost afraid to hold on to the ball. He's afraid to throw it deep. I remember people were talking his last year in Green Bay, and they were like, his touchdown to interception ratio is outstanding. And it's like, it's not always a good thing, folks. Like, throwing 2 interceptions in an entire season probably means you want that explosive of an offense. A lot of bubble screens, a lot of quick slants, safe throws, and it is funny to me. This is a broader football thing that I'll say before I get into my Vikings scaring me take. It's crazy how, if you ask people in 2019, like the greatest QBs of all time, Aaron Rodgers got brought up in that discussion on talent alone. I don't think people consider him like top 10 anymore because his last season with Green Bay wasn't great. He tore his Achilles with the Jets, and then a media circus ensued. Where, like I said, he was talking about coming back off an Achilles injury. He did the whole I'm immunized, not vaccinated thing, which I'm not getting into vaccinations on this show. We don't talk politics. It is what it is. It was definitely lying by omission, if you want to go that route. Which, like, I don't care if you want to get vaccinated or not, but, like, don't lie to the media. What? That's insane. Unless you're a general manager. And you are saying, we're not going to trade this guy. You can do that because that's leverage. But, like, anyway. And then this last season with the Jets, it was a circus, and they were bad. And he wasn't that great. So, like, I think him and then the other example of this is Russell Wilson. Just, like, the last 5 years, Russell Wilson's, like, all-time value has just plummeted. Like, his legacy has just plummeted off a cliff. Like, because, you know, it came out that people hated him in Seattle, and then he sucked in Denver. Anyway, let's talk about why the Vikings are scaring me. I think that teams tell you what they think and what their opinions are on players. What's the word? Let's just say on players. And they do that by their actions. You know, Kevin O'Connell can say, J.J. McCarthy looks like a franchise quarterback. But if he never gets on the field, he's not a franchise quarterback because he can't get on the field. So the Vikings, even entertaining this, and I'm sure in 5 years it will come out what will really happen in the last two, in the middle of March 2025, the Aaron Rodgers drama, that someone will write a book on it or something. I'm sure there's a fun story to be told. What's been reported frightens me because if you think you have the guy in your building, you're not thinking about bringing Aaron Rodgers in. You're excited to get J.J. McCarthy on the field, and you're excited to, you're right, well, we probably won't win the Super Bowl this year. You don't usually win the Super Bowl in your rookie season. I don't know that it's ever happened. I don't know that the rookies ever even reached it.
Never.
Yeah. It's just not something that happens. And J.J. McCarthy's not a rookie. It's his first season playing. 2026, though, that's a window. That's okay, let's hit on a draft pick or two, and we are rolling in talent on this team. If the quarterback is even, like you said, Sam Darnold, without the meltdown at the very end of the season, we're cooking with gas, and we are off to the races. And for the Vikings to, I don't want to say jeopardize that, but think about, but does Aaron Rodgers give us a better chance today? It just scares me. It makes me think that maybe there's not the confidence there in J.J. McCarthy. I get that, seeing him in practice in preseason only goes so far, but they have an idea in that building how he's operating, and I think that for them to contemplate this, it kind of scares me. And they know this, but I'm just going to say this real quick. Lewis Cine got hit on the depth chart, right? Like when they drafted Andrew Sendejo, Metellus, we didn't expect him to be so good, and we really love Theo Jackson. He's been really good. And Harrison Smith, we thought he was going to fall off a cliff. Cam Bynum, he's, they just had so many good safeties, they could just kind of hide him away. And then, but you can't do that with a quarterback, man. We got to know now. And also to the people who are thinking, Aaron Rodgers gives us a 6% better chance to win the Super Bowl, sign him. We got to win a Super Bowl this season. No exceptions. This is the year. For those people, I would like to just are we sure Aaron Rodgers is still good at football? Are we sure he's not going to look really bad at football this season? Like 2010 Brett Favre has his career ended on, one play type stuff. And also, don't we want to know if J.J. McCarthy sucks or not? Because if he sucks, Jonathan Allen's still possibly going to be here next year. Will Fries and Ryan Kelly are still going to be here next year. So if he sucks, we should probably stop calling, the Rams about a Matt Stafford trade and finagling the books around to know that we're going to go all in. Let's go get a guy and go all in with, and let's try and do the Tom Brady thing where it's like, are there any back nine of the career veterans that are ready to come one or two seasons, try and win another Super Bowl, try and win your first Super Bowl, whatever the case is, who's out there that we can acquire and see what happens whenever you go out and get them. I just think it makes the most sense for the long-term health and the short-term health. Let's see what the kid does. Because up until the last 2 weeks, I thought the Vikings loved this kid. The way they handled Sam Darnold, like every report about Sam Darnold after the season was like, the Vikings want him back, but like not for anything. And then you see the deal that he got in Seattle, and it's like, oh, they really must not have wanted him back. He only got like $36 million, and it's like a 3-year contract, but the Seahawks can cut him after year 1 and like owe him nothing. It's crazy how like he's basically on another prove it deal, and the Vikings could have brought him back for that, and they chose not to. So that, I don't know. I'm conflicted, but that's what the Vikings, I think, have been telling us, and so I'm concerned. And maybe it's just I need something to talk about and worry about for the next 6 months. So until I see J.J. McCarthy and pads throwing footballs, I'm going to be worried about this and what they actually think about him. Do you read into that? Again, I might just be fully down a conspiracy theory rabbit hole.
I think it's hard. We could speculate all day. We could speculate until September 3rd or 10th or whatever the first week is. We could speculate for the next 6 months about what the Vikings were thinking and, what their motivations were. But I think there's some merit to your concerns. I also think there's a very realistic chance that it was all posturing and they were never going to sign Aaron Rodgers. Now, the counter to that is, why haven't they signed another backup quarterback? So that's a very real question mark that they that's a very real question mark that they have not yet answered. And so, I think I'll just leave it at that. I think it's all speculation at this point. I don't have a ton of worry about it because, like you said, everything that we've learned and heard from the Vikings and J.J. McCarthy is that he's the guy they believe in. I also believe that this season is another reason to have McCarthy be the guy this year is you are bringing him into about as good of a situation as you can get. It's not perfect. There's going to be holes. Somebody's probably going to get hurt. One of your offensive linemen might go down. It might not be as perfect as you want it to be. But you're not going to get much better than this for a guy getting his first real NFL action. And so why not give him a chance now? And I do think that's probably what the Vikings have every intention of doing. I also think there's probably just maybe to answer your question in another way, I think there's also just a real chance that they understand that when you tear a meniscus, you potentially are injury prone moving forward as well. And so you have to have a little bit of insurance for that. Do I think Aaron Rodgers is the right insurance? Absolutely not. But that's their opinion versus mine and all of that.
Let's have this conversation. Who is the right choice? That's still out there reasonably. I've seen speculation from they should just draft like a Kyle McCord. They should take like a day 2, early day 3 quarterback and just have 2 young guys and Burt Rippon. Do you think they are going to go after? Reports over the weekend, Tannehill is in play. I think Flacco is in play. Jameis just signed. I don't. Was there any ever real Jameis speculation to the Vikings, or was that just like people on X saying that? Like, did the Vikings ever show any interest in Jameis Winston?
Honestly, I think that was fans.
Yeah, I think it was fans too.
I did not see any real reports of that. I think the reports that I have seen of the folks that are still out there, Ryan Tannehill from Tennessee, or not Tennessee anymore, but previously Tennessee. Where was he this last season anyway?
He was waiting tables. He didn't play.
Okay. So whether or not that's accurate or not, but that's been floating around the interwebs. I still think the Joe Flacco one is interesting. You're not bringing Flacco into play. You're bringing him into mentor. I also still think the Case Keenum one is interesting. Those are probably the two that I would focus on, just for the sake of mentorship and all that. I think Teddy Bridgewater's interesting, but I feel like there's kind of this Detroit or nothing mentality with Teddy. So those are probably the only names that I would honestly find realistically intriguing. the rest of them that are out there, you can't really get me excited about Carson Wentz, who somehow is already 32 years old.
Insane.
I feel like he was just 23 and now he's ancient in NFL terms. You can't sell me on Russell Wilson or CJ Beathard or the decrepit remains of Josh Johnson looking for his 19th team to play with. So those three guys I think are probably the most interesting to me. Flacco, Keenum, and Teddy Bridgewater, but I also think the Bridgewater one is pretty unrealistic.
If Teddy Bridgewater signs with the Vikings, we'll do an emergency show, and I'll cry on the air. I want you to know that. Like there will be tears. I'll be like, it's finally happening. Like we're gonna get Teddy. That's the first quarterback I ever loved. As like a most serious football fan, if you will, because it was. Let's all be honest here. It was pretty hard to love Christian Pondo, and I couldn't really get attached to Matt Castle either. So when Teddy Bridgewater was the draft pick, I was like, finally something to cling to. Yeah, I agree with you. Right now, my favorite candidate, aside from Teddy, obviously, is realistically, I think they're going to get Tannehill, and I think they're going to do it after the draft so they don't have to give up comp picks. Right now, the projections have them getting a third and a fourth round comp pick next season, and I don't know, man. Would you trade a 2026 third and fifth round pick, the fourth and fifth round pick for Joe Flacco? I wouldn't. So I think they're just going to wait. I think right now there is some, hey, don't sign with anybody. We're just trying to kind of cook the books here. We're going to offer you a contract on May 1st. Just hold on. You know, like I think there's some of that going on. And I think that's why you see them having meetings with some of these guys, but nothing's getting done. Whereas Jeff Okudah, who didn't really impact the comp pick formula because he costs like 6 cents or whatever. He's a guy where it's like, yeah, we bought him in on Monday. We had a deal done Tuesday morning. Tannehill, I do think, because he was a free agent all of last season. He didn't play anywhere. I do believe he can come back off the street and not count towards the comp pick formula. I don't know how that works because he was a free agent, but then the draft. So I think we'll coach on that. So they could sign Tannehill any day now, and it wouldn't affect that. But I think they would rather go with Flacco. Flacco has won a Super Bowl and does give them a realistic chance to win some games if McCarthy goes down for a little bit. But I'm in the same boat now that I was this time last year, I guess after the draft last year. If J.J. McCarthy gets hurt again, I will make really depressing Instagram posts and just be upset for a long time because I'll be like, we're not doing anything with, and so whoever the backup is, CJ Beathard, Case Keenum, whatever. And I'll be pleasantly surprised if we do. My daughter just woke up, so I'm going to give my final thoughts very briefly. Ready for golf season, opening day here, this week for the Reds. Excited about that. Just excited for summer spouts and everything like that. But really make sure that you tune into the draft. We're going to have a ton of really good draft stuff coming up. And follow the show at LTV Vikings. Follow Will at Will Bad Blues. Will, I will let you take us home.
Fantastic. Two brief final thoughts from me. We mentioned this last week was probably going to happen, or I guess 2 weeks ago. Garrett Bradbury has officially been cut. Long-time Vikings center. He actually got a contract extension a couple years ago. But by cutting him, the Vikings are going to save some money. Apologies for not having the actual dollar amounts up on the screen here. But they'll save a little bit here by cutting him before June 1st. And we're officially moved on. We're into the Ryan Kelly at center era for the Vikings. We've moved on past the undersized yet cerebral center in Garrett Bradbury. I think they, locker room favorite, really smart guy. Him and Kirk Cousins really got along well in their years here together. But clearly, just some issues with his size and ability to protect, especially in the pass game. Pretty decent run blocker, but couldn't really pass protect against the ever improving interior D linemen in their pass rushing ability. The second note, this probably deserves a little bit more of a conversation on our next show. We didn't really have time to get into it this week, and we do have to wrap it up here, but Rondale Moore, former Arizona Cardinal and Purdue Boilermaker. Vikings fans might remember him torching the Vikings in 2021 in Glendale, with his jitterbugging and, just he's sort of, if you don't remember the guy, he's a small, undersized slot receiver who is just quick as all get out. He's had a couple injuries though, so he's missed about a season and a half of his 4 NFL seasons. So hence why he was pretty easy to get. He was on the Falcons last season, but didn't play a single snap because of injury. He's exciting. If you can somehow keep that guy healthy, he could be a real difference maker as the third wide receiver on this team. He also has some punt return history. Whether or not you put an oft injured receiver back at punt return, that's a whole nother conversation. But I think maybe Jordan and we can dig into Rondale Moore a little bit on a future show, because I think he's going to be an important part of this offense at a, supporting role variety. I think he's really interesting and could be sort of a game changer as a slot receiver, sort of to be the complementary piece to Addison and Jefferson. So exciting. One of the more exciting free agent signings that I've, got excited about, other than, the obvious big ones, like the Jonathan Allens. Like, this was one where when I saw it come across the old X sphere, it was an eyebrow raiser for sure. It's exciting. So, like Jordan said, we will come back with Dustin. Hopefully next week. If we can't make the schedule work, maybe we'll do a just us draft show. But basically, from here on out, for the next 4 weeks, we're going to talk draft. So yes, the Vikings only have 4 picks as of right now, but they're still important. And the way to keep staying good and competitive is hitting in the draft, which the Vikings have not done well over the last few years. So that's got to improve. We'll talk more about that next week and for the next month. Skol, y'all.